going on?
Not much, man. How are you, sir?
I'm doing I'm doing well. Just like I said, I'm on the night shift right now, so I'm in
Gotcha.
an odd state of mind. The past few days it was just me driving back from work,
Hmm.
and I just like I said, I'm on a weird schedule, so at the end of the workday I was extremely tired. So
Gotcha.
basically I was driving home with the air conditioning on really high and blasting music loud just so I can stay awake during the commute home because that was
Yeah.
a struggle
How
occasionally.
long? How long's your commute?
It's a 40-minute ride from the boat back to my front door. Well,
Gotcha.
45 minute, but then again, I was driving slower, so it's closer to an hour when I'm
Okay.
because I don't want to drive as quickly when I'm tired because
Right.
slower reaction time and all that good stuff.
So you said boat. Are you in the Navy?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I didn't know that. I feel like this is actually us meeting for the first time. I just know you through Breathe University and like the Chameleon
So
Call.
are you on? Were you on? I feel like I remember you from the Chameleon Call. Were you on Game Changers as well, or just Chameleon Call?
Just the Chameleon Call. Like,
Just Chameleon Call.
I joined back in 2016, and it's like I've slowly been getting back into like the swing of things because I stepped away for a little bit just to kind of like gather myself. Like I work in construction and it can get a little bit hectic there, but I mean, not military wise, but I know what you mean by like having to work the late shift hours. And especially if it's like you just work the day shift and then you have a little bit of time to like flip over, that completely messes up your schedule because it takes at least like 3 days until you're like, oh, okay, like now I get this night shift thing. And they're like, oh, you got to switch back over. It's like, come on, guys, give me a week or something. Like
Yeah,
let me get some time to get used to it.
I fully expect that my schedule's gonna change like well next week or something. But it's I'm like I said, I'm getting used. Like the first night was bad just because after I got up or I went to bed at 8 o'clock
Hmm.
in the morning and then I woke up at noon and could not get back to sleep. And
Mm.
then so I got to invest in some blackout curtains
Yep, yep.
so that I can
Jump on
sleep.
Amazon, man. Those work pretty well. You want to get the blackout curtains and get you some even while you wait, just put some aluminum foil on your windows because that'll
Aluminum,
keep the sun out.
aluminum foil on the windows. I never
Yeah.
thought about them.
You just put aluminum foil up and put tape because I had a few roommates that were on night shifts. So it's like it worked out because I worked during the days, they worked during the nights, and like people are prancing about like during the daytime, like dogs, kids, whatever. And I would have never thought about people that work during the night shift. And you're always wondering, oh, like, why is Waffle House open 24/7? Like, that's the only place you can get some food, like, if you didn't do any meal prep or something like that. So I, I, I salute you simply for the fact of working that shift because, like, not a lot of people do it. And I guess people just don't understand, like, while other people are sleeping, like, somebody's got to keep the lights on.
Oh yeah, the that's one of the reasons why I joined a 24-hour gym, just for that reason. The fact that I was gonna have times where I was gonna have to work out at weird times, and so just
Hmm.
having gym time not be or not having like the gym's operating hours not have to be a factor when I
Right.
consider the rest of my day. That removed a lot of stress. I could go there, like quite often I'm there like 4:30 in the morning, so I don't have to worry about that. So that's definitely
Nice.
a plus.
That's good. So how long you been in the military?
I've been in the Navy 5 years as of like 4 days ago. My Navy birthday is October 21st. So yeah. Oh yeah, well, 6 days ago. Wow. But
Nice.
yeah, 5 years. Came in October 21st, 2014.
Okay.
And uh, been, been doing it ever since.
Got you. What got you into the Navy?
So I guess you would call it, so I guess you do want the long end. Well, like, I'll give you like the
Yeah,
modern.
yeah. No, I mean just whatever you want to give, just like spell it out.
All right. So the after graduating college, I wanted to work in the nuclear field,
Mm-hmm.
and like everyone and their second cousin. At first, I didn't want to join the Navy, but everyone and their second cousin recommended, "Hey, you ever thought about joining the Navy?" And I kind of, the more I thought about it, the more, and like other options weren't really available, the more it kind of made sense. So I took the combination of the job, being in the area that I wanted to work in,
Hmm.
and everyone suggesting it as a sign. So I ended up joining,
Gotcha.
and so yeah. So when I first came in, go through boot camp, which was like, I don't know, it was more so. Boot camp wasn't really that difficult physically, but like it's more so a psychological thing. So like you're a chameleon. So
Yeah.
as introverts, we get our energy from being alone. It's not a thing in boot camp. So like I went
Hmm.
from, I just like, after I have a long day and filled with people, I like to have time to myself to recharge my energy. But since you don't have that, like whenever I
Right.
came back to my room, I could be alone, and then I would have the time to recharge. But when I came back to my room in boot camp, I had 88 roommates, so um,
Mm.
I always have to be like a little bit guarded every single time, because at any moment they could be told to do this, or someone who like higher up could come in and we all have to like be right. So it was always just a little bit, uh, always a little bit on edge. So I finally actually was able to relax when I got out of boot camp. And
Gotcha.
after boot camp, that was in Great Lakes, Illinois. We moved down. I moved down to Charleston, South Carolina. That's where the first couple phases of my training were. And
Hmm.
there I only had one roommate as opposed to 80, which was nice. And then for much of it, I didn't have any roommates, because like the person who I originally moved in with, he moved out because he was further along in the pipeline than I was. So after he finished his training and all that, he moved out. I don't even remember his name, but he's a pretty cool dude. And then
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, then oh, after the so the first two phases of training were just really schooling,
Hmm.
just your classic classroom style learning. And
Gotcha.
then after it was more of a rapid pace, and you had to get used to doing the you had to get used to doing the homework or their specific way. Like the Navy, like they're big on attention to details. Like not only you can know how to do it, because like being in college for engineering, like I had experience with a lot of the math and the principles they were concerned that they were doing, but it was being adjusted to the Navy's pace and the Navy's style of doing things that I had to
Mm.
adjust to. So like they had this thing, and one thing I will give the military credit for the Navy in this regard, a lot of times the punishment fits the crime. Like for a lot of things, like the main thing that we have to do push-ups for everything. So like
Hmm.
one thing where if you got a problem wrong on your homework, you have to do this thing called uh, homework makeup. So you
Mm.
would take the problem that you got wrong, and you'd have to like write out the 4.0 solution like
Yeah.
5 different times for it. Like so, like you make a mistake, then you have to do the right thing 5 different times, and then
You're right.
or, or so for if you failed like a uniform inspection, they would have this thing called a fashion show. It's like where you come in 3 different times during a weekend wearing a particular uniform, and then you get uniform inspected. So like a lot of times, if you have an issue, they do uh, provide a solution that does correct that issue. So
Right.
that's that's one thing that I do like. So so that was the first two phases were A school and power school, where we like A school is where I learned about being a mechanic, power school is where I learned more about nuclear power, and then the prototype, that's where we learned about the kind of got to actually operate a nuclear power plant. So
Oh,
a lot of
nice.
standing watch, a lot of taking logs, learning how the different things, and being able to actually put the things that
The
we had to
training.
write about. And it
Gotcha.
was
No, I was going to say you were actually able to take your training, like what you're learning in the classroom, and like kind of put it into practice on the job.
well, yeah, I've been drawing this certain component as like a cylinder for like a year. I finally got to see what it actually looked like in real life. Finally get to see it.
Mm.
I finally got to see it, see the stuff, touch the stuff. So like whenever like so in terms of actual operations, we get to see how it really looked in real life, and that really helped to kind of.
Wait, your volume just went out for a sec. Ah, your volume just stopped. Did you mute yourself on your desktop or something?
How's
There
well,
you go. There you are. You're back.
I had to close like 2 tabs. I guess this is. I guess I just needed. Oh, that makes sense. But when I originally got this computer that the laptop that I'm currently on, it
Hmm.
was one that I exclusively bought for being underway. So That was like
What
when we
for
out
for being under what?
underway. So that's just the term we use for like when we go out to sea. So
Oh, okay.
I didn't buy this. This is an exceedingly basic laptop. Doesn't have really have any bells and whistles. Doesn't really have high quality pictures because I legit only bought it just so I could use it to take notes on different ideas that I had while I was out at sea.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, I mean,
Me,
the main thing, if the audio is coming through, that's mostly what I'm concerned about. Like some of the video I may put up on YouTube just like as an extra, but I mean, you're coming through audio, like I can hear you, so that's mainly what I'm concerned with.
so wait, what is it? This going to be a podcast or a?
Yeah, essentially, like what I've been doing, I started, like I had the idea last year, kind of watching the social media calls with Nikki and Jose, and in there they encourage you to create something. And wait, your audio just went out again.
Uh,
There you are. Okay, you're there.
all right. So wait, so what you say you're going to be putting some of this on YouTube just for your channel?
Yeah, yeah. So what I did, I started it October 1st, and I'll send this file back to you so that you can listen to it. And if there's anything that I need to cut out, I can cut that out. So don't feel like you have to censor yourself, or if there's something that you can't talk about, like we can
Oh, well,
cut
that's
that out
good.
of it.
So what? I guess if we're doing this now, what do you like? What questions do you want to ask? 'Cause I was just kind of just ranting and not really making anything really.
No, no, like what you were doing is the exact purpose of the podcast. So, like, the idea behind it was that I've worked in the construction industry for 8 years now. I do construction engineering, and actually, for the last 3.5 years, I worked at a nuclear power plant where we're trying to get new systems online in Waynesboro, Georgia. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that project or not, the Vogel project. And like working there, and even before I got there, anyone that I met in construction and even people that I met through Breathe University, through college, I always found people to be very interesting in like how they thought, what they had to offer, like the lives they lived. And I always kind of see a part of myself in them. So the purpose of this podcast is basically to reach out to those people, like new people that I've met, like your friends, like yourself, and old friends or coworkers that I feel like I could get along with, or at least I've had a conversation with before, and just be like, okay, like let's jump on here. Let's talk about like who you are, or who you say that you are, what you do, and basically how you got to present day. And if you have any projects going on, like feel free to share that and use this as a platform to kind of like um, share your story.
Okay, so like what? So what do you just so I can help better tailor the information that I'm giving?
Yeah.
What what do you want your listeners to derive from me speaking? Like what
So, yeah. So, what I want the listener to get from this is basically to see somebody else that looks like them, to be encouraged by saying, oh, okay, like here is somebody that's in the Navy. Here's somebody that works a night shift. That's like, because a lot of times with if you look at social media now, like you see an Instagram model or you see that, if you're working construction or if you're working like in school, like none of that has anything to do with you, and like you could care less. And with the space of podcasting, you have such a variety, and what I'm trying to do is just kind of talk to the common man and kind of talk to myself now and like a younger version of myself, to say somebody that's going through college, say at this time, they may, or even before they get to college, they may be having a hard time deciding what they want to do. And a lot of times people have this misconception that, oh, everybody has it all figured out. And it's like, that's just not the case. Like some people put on that persona in order to kind of give you the confidence to make wise decisions. But sometimes that persona ends up having the negative effect where it kind of paralyzes people, where they make decisions, and when it doesn't get them where they want to get, then all of a sudden they're just like, oh, like the emperor doesn't have any clothes on, you guys are all lying to us, like what's going on? So it's like they take their frustration and they just kind of stay frustrated versus like, okay, I'm frustrated. Maybe somebody played me, but like now I know better, so I can do something with it. So I'm hoping that this kind of gives them a chance to say, okay, here are people that are figuring it out as they go along, and like don't get discouraged on the path that you're on. Basically, like keep at it and just know, um, if you want to know somebody that looks like you, like this is somebody that looks like you. It doesn't have to be someone that's already made it, but like everybody is on their journey every single day. And that's like the concept that I kind of just I'm painting in my mind as I'm working this thing out.
All right. And you said, do you have a specific like breed of person you're trying to talk to, or?
Just I mean the main breed of the people I would say I'm really talking to myself, or just people that I'm attracted to. So anybody that's in Breathe University, like I've talked to um, different influential people. Like I'm not sure, do you know Shelley Shelton?
I've heard. I'm pretty sure she's in Game Changers. I'm pretty sure she's
Yeah,
in Game.
I think she went through Game Changers and became a certified speaker. And I spoke with her a few weeks ago, and I'm going to put out her episode this coming Tuesday because that's when I dropped the podcast. And the reason for that is because she has a book coming out November 1st. So I was like, okay, it would make sense to do this now rather than wait 20 or so episodes and be like, oh, this is the order I'm going to drop it in. But um, yeah, just me reaching out to her was kind of like, okay, I've heard of you a lot and I kind of see you from a distance, but I don't really know who you are and I would like to get to know you. And from that, she sent me a video that was actually her becoming a certified speaker. And just like the way that video and thing moved me, I was like, man, I got to talk to you now. And like we had the conversation, and it was just like, man, like it's not like I'm not trying to make this too structured. And my whole thing is just give you the ability to speak. And especially talking to another chameleon, a lot of times you're always looking out for other people's needs. And in a way, this works twofolds where I get a chance to look out for somebody. And then more times than not, they kind of flip the script on me because this is the first podcast. It's like it may not be clear what's going on. So they're like, okay, what are you doing here? Like, what are we doing, Ashley? Like, what's really going on? And then I just explain it. So it's like it's forcing me to just get on camera and just be like, okay, let me do something I wouldn't normally do. Like I can work in the background. I can get up in the wee hours of the night, respond to this call or respond to that call. But to actually have somebody explain some things to you, I think it's a value to a lot of people where most of the time I think you and I probably grew up on the do as I say, and you especially being in the military is like do as I say and like don't ask me why.
Okay, so right now, I guess I'll continue where I left off
Yeah.
in terms of my story. All right. Well, I mean, I mean, if I want to get like to like my story, that's like I like gave like the highlights concerning my military career, but you know, I'm sure we'll circle back and touch some stuff as it becomes more relevant throughout the course of the
Okay.
conversation. But all right, so I was talking about.
You're talking about going through like how you got into the Navy, and you talked about like the first two phases of like going through boot camp, and then you used like a certain terminology. I was going to ask you maybe to clarify. You said it's like A or B.
Oh, A school and power school. So A school is basically where you kind of learn your. So me, I'm a nuclear machinist, mate. So nuke. So they call us nukes. So everyone who works in nuclear power, they call us nukes.
Yeah.
And so I'm a nuke mechanic. And so the first phase is really just me learning about being a mechanic in the
Mm.
nuclear. And as far as my job in the nuke, you get like the basics. You know how valves work, how they're built, how the steam plant works in general, stuff like that. And then the and then for the power school, that was the more you learn more about the reactor theory. You learn like how reactors work. You learn just basic drawings of the plant and how the neutrons respond, how what kind of fuel we're using, stuff like that.
Right.
And so that's where we get into like the I guess nuts and bolts of the nuclear power plant. And so
Got you.
I really enjoyed. What's up?
No, no, I'm just saying I understand. I'm trying to like respond so that you know that I'm here, but at the same time I'm trying to be quiet so that it doesn't interrupt your thought.
Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. But the all right, so the so yeah, the second or that next phase is power school, learning a lot more about the plant in general, and then the third phase was prototype, where we actually got to actively work inside a nuclear power plant, got to actually see the control room. So like it's actually, we've all seen The Simpsons. It's actually like when I actually knowing how incredibly like sensitive those systems are, like it's amazing that they put Homer in charge of it, and not only that, by himself, because in a real
Right,
nuclear power plant control room, you are not by yourself. That is not how it works, and
right.
especially so, it's actually a pain. Like people, a lot of times people just get afraid of like because they hear about series like Chernobyl, like we
Yeah,
learned a lot. Like the nuclear power is like absurdly safe. Like the
yeah.
you would have there are so many like trips and interlocks and things in place to prevent like a meltdown or whatever. Like there's so many things in place to prevent. Like you would have to be trying to break the plant in order to actually cause some serious damage. So I got to see all that around. I got to uh, operate some stuff, and uh, we'll talk about this. So one of
Gotcha.
my first during the so like I said, the first few phases of training were your classic classroom style of learning, right? After that was, like I said, prototype was where you're moving around. And so you do these things called checkouts. Basically, it's for qualifications. So you take like a system, and then you would go up to one of the staff instructors, and then you say, "Hey, I need to check out." Okay, so then they would ask you a few questions about the system. Systems questions would be like, "Okay, well, how does the system work? What's the system's major functions? Where's stuff located in the plant? Stuff like that." And so you'd answer the questions, and then so they would answer, you'd answer some questions, and if they decided you had a accurate knowledge or well enough working knowledge of the system, then they
Hmm.
would sign your card and then scan it in. And so you continually just did that over and over again until eventually got to the point where you had all your calls complete and you're ready for your oral board. And so final oral boards, you're standing in a room and you're talking to two people who know a lot more about the system than you do. And so they'll ask you these questions. And so then, okay, they'll say, hey, draw the system. And so Mark will draw the system up, and they say, okay, let's say we're cruising. They'll give you some plant parameters. Okay, temperature is this, pressure is this, and then this happens. Well, what do you expect to happen next? Like, what casualty are you in? So
Hmm.
they're going to ask you different things with regards to that. And then afterwards, you leave, and then you come back, and then they tell you whether or not you passed. And so my
Hmm.
first time through, actually, uh, my first oral board, I did not pass. Fun fact, did
Hmm.
not pass. Actually, so I went through and they said, a lot of stuff was wrong. And so that was like really difficult for me my first time through. And so through that experience, I learned a lot of things about myself. I realized that during the time in prototype, I really neglected myself. I spent pretty much all my waking hours at work trying to get qualified because they were continually pushing, you got to get qualified, you got to get qualified, I got to work on these. What are you doing as far as checkouts? And so I really, I didn't spend any time really with my roommates or any friends. I hadn't been at anything resembling church in weeks. I didn't really enjoy any of my old hobbies and stuff like that. So I was just kind of just existing just for one purpose, getting qualified. And because I ignored all the other aspects of my life, I
Hmm.
ended up being in a state of mind that was not conducive and not balanced. And so I ended up failing my first time through. Now, after the first failure, there was like this 2-week period where I got ready for a reboard. So I spent more time there, but I was kind of more focused at this point. I was more focused on getting qualified because I knew what I neglected, and I kind of had my life had more of a it was it wasn't as balanced because I was spending more time at work because I was on plus hours, but
Hmm.
I still I had a renewed I had like more of a sense of purpose during this period of time, and so
Right, right.
I really assessed how I was learning or how I was taking in information, and I chose the most optimal way. And so uh, something that I'm sure like you've
Yeah.
experienced before.
I definitely identify with that.
When I was getting certain checkouts, like I would basically I would want to study the system so well and get everything perfect, right? I would want to study it
Hmm.
perfect before I went and asked for the checkout because subconsciously I guess I felt like I should know everything before I go, talking to someone about it.
Yeah.
And this fear slowed me down. I was behind the curve because I wasn't getting enough checkouts. I mean, I was slow to qual. I was like the absolute last person in my class to finish getting qualified because
Hmm.
I took so long to get it because I wanted to get everything perfect before I went to go for the checkout, and so that really
Right.
slowed me down. So that
Gotcha.
just shows, like, if you look at my assessment, I'm like just super high C, very, very low on D, and the D is like what your risk. The low D means what? It means that you're risk averse. It means that you're not really down to just go for results. And because I was so slow to go for results and slow, methodical, that slowed me down. And so I ended up that's what ended up having me be behind the curve. So like I said, during that in between period, I got a lot of more work done. I was able to just rather than trying to draw a system perfect for it, I don't get everything perfectly. I just
Hmm.
do a working drawing. Like, does the system work? Okay,
Right.
cool. Then I can move on and then learn the next thing. So after those 2 weeks, I ended up passing my second board, and that was a huge relief. And it's kind of the feeling that we've all had after we like pass the final or something like that, where you just leave the final, you're just like, wow, like what is my life right now? Everything, my entire existence was devoted to this. And so
Right.
after that, I got stationed down here in Jacksonville, effectively, and so I got to uh, so I'm currently on a boat now, stationed on a submarine, and I guess from here, what do you know? What do you want to know? Like, what's like being on the boat, or
Sure. Let's go there.
all right. So my class is submarine. We're called boomers, which is like we have a lot of large weapons on board, and
Hmm.
we so we don't go out for too long. We don't have extremely long deployments, but when we
Hmm.
go out, we submerge, and we don't really service again until it's time to go back.
Right.
And so when you're out at sea, a lot of times it can be a little unnerving, just because I mean there's no sun, so it doesn't really mess with your biological clock. You kind of just learn, so it's not really we don't really think so. I guess we do think in terms of times, but really, as far
Yeah.
as our biological clock is concerned, it's like three different phases. So,
Hmm.
8 hour watch, everyone spends in 8 hour watches. And so,
Yeah.
learn, so you're either on watch, off going, or oncoming. So,
Okay.
you're either like standing watch, or you're in your time after your watch, but you're not yet sleeping, and then your oncoming time that's you're sleeping. And so, that's when, a couple, like 20 minutes before your watch, someone will like they'll send people to come wake you up, or you request them and not to wake up. And so just the mindset while you're out at sea, like it can be
Hmm.
just because you get stuck in it. But people, we do the same routine every single day, and so
Right.
it can be a little unnerving because a lot of people they miss they miss their families, and they miss
Hmm.
certain things. And I just miss fresh air, to be honest. When I was out there,
Right.
like being fresh, it was like a joke that all we do out there is like we just breathing in recycled farts. Like because when you fart on a submarine, like it's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
So like it's just there to go, and then but like we do like more often than
I would have never thought about that, but that's a good point. I'm glad you
we
brought
do
that
get the
up.
air like recirculated when we like go like near the surface to replenish
Gotcha.
the air supply. But for a lot of times we're just breathing in recycled farts, and so but and like I heard some things like something like when you get a paper cut, it doesn't heal as quickly because you're not receiving fresh air. So like your cuts heal slower when you're down there, stuff like that. And
Mm.
so like I said, and everyone's heard of like just being in close quarters with like that many people for a long period of time, especially as an introvert, it can
Yeah.
be a little unnerving just for long periods of time. That can be slowly unnerving, but
Yeah.
one thing that I do love about a submarine as opposed to being on an aircraft carrier is that there's way less people. Like there's way like aircraft carrier, they're much bigger, but with a submarine, it's a lot. It's it's a lot. It's a lot fewer people, and even though there's it's the closed spaces, but you learn you know everyone. You learn everyone's name. Like
Yeah.
I'll see my captain. I'll say like good morning, sir. Like good morning, petty officer. Just like he knows me, he knows my name, and then so that's something that I genuinely appreciate being able just to see people not have to straighten up because on the surface surface fleet they have to do things like care about like how shiny your shoes are and like that's
Yeah,
I
right.
I
That's
don't
when I think military, that's exactly what I think of. Like you go boot camp, and then afterwards, like you've got to keep up like your standard, make your bed neat every single day. Like shoes got to be shined, like suit and everything, like uniforms got to be tight.
for certain branches they care more so about this, especially on the service fleet they care about that because they're constantly it's like submarines we don't really care about that as much. We like I have yet to hear about an incident report where like a reactor plant casualty happened because someone's shoes weren't shined. That was not a thing. Never been like MM2 Smith failed to or like a joke that we make is like, oh, if you have your hands in your pockets then that'll cause like a flooding or like
Yeah,
it's never been a
gotcha.
case where like someone's shoes weren't shined and then a fire happens. That
Right,
doesn't.
right.
And
Gotcha.
so
But
uh,
that makes sense because like you mentioned before, you're concerned with nuclear power, nuclear activity, and like a lot of people don't understand that. And I think you did a great job earlier explaining like the rigorous processes that you go through in
but
order to just like be allowed to have access to like be around the operations because some people just hear nuclear power and they think about the dangers, but like already knowing that you're being trusted with this information and this is what's being required of you, it's like, okay, your shoes aren't shined, like I'm more worried about this working. If this doesn't work, like your shoes aren't going to matter.
listen, I wish I could explain to you like how much in order to have the public's trust, we like not only the training that we go through, but like there's so many procedures in place for like taking care of nuclear materials. It's
Yeah,
so painstaking the amount of things that we have to go through because
right.
procedures just to handle nuclear material. Like and and it's just
I can only imagine it because I've only been on the construction side, and just to get like the background clearance to get on site to be able to be like, okay, all we're doing is we're setting up, we're building this plant up in order for them to bring the nuclear material in and to do the operation side of things. So like we've probably, I don't know, from the time that I worked there, like 3.5 years, and then working at a fabrication plant beforehand to send the material to the construction site, it was like procedures upon procedures and revision upon revision. And you're talking about building a prototype versus like everything else that's been in the US 30 to 40 years before now, like before Chernobyl and all that stuff went down. And I think that's the main reason why a lot of things haven't been built for so long. But people also don't realize that most of our power comes from nuclear power. Like wind power, solar power, that stuff is good, but everything has its drawbacks. But nuclear power has, I don't mean to sound like a cheerleader, but it's like when you know something, it's good to educate people. And just like the drastic uh, just the gap in how much power, I'm just doing this to give people a visual for anybody that's looking, but like just the gap of what you get from a coal plant versus like a nuclear plant versus wind, solar, whatever else energy is out there. It's like the reason you're able to use a phone, the reason we have satellites up in the sky, like every time you flip on your light switch, however many times you want to do it, like that comes from somewhere. And you have people like yourself that are trusted and you're trained to do this every single day. It's not Homer at the control panels just doing whatever he wants to do.
absolutely not. Homer, like I said, Homer is not by himself, and he is not doing. We don't have somebody in there going eeny meeny miny mo. Like
Right, right.
we have three people in there. Well, actually four, and it's like there's tons of different supervision. Like every single time, like there's the officer in the back. They say like every single time someone's about to do anything, they'll
Mhm.
say like shifting this pump, and then officers say shift pump I, and then they'll shift the pump
Yeah,
and shift it, pump and shift it that. Like there's tons of like random repeat packs and like
right, right.
updating stuff like
A
this.
big thing is in nuclear is communication, or at least three-way communication, where it's like I say something to you, you repeat back to me what I said, and then um, you have to confirm that the message received. Like there has to be an agreement and like what's communicated to where it's like we want no room for error, because the second there's room for error, that's distrust from the public.
We want to remove any ambiguity, like legit. There's like I said, the procedures that we have in place are like absolutely like very very stringent. Like say if there's a valve that needs to be operated, like that has to do with the primary plant. There has to be a supervisor over, like he'll say, Richardson, I need you over here to help open these valves, because
Yeah.
he can't do it himself because he's in more of a supervisory role. So
Right.
I'm operating the valve. He's receives an order from maneuverings where everyone's like, that's where the main controlling part as far as the react plant's going. Like he'll say like, Chief, shut valve one, and then he'll say shut valve 1I, and he'll say Richardson, shut valve one, and then I'll look at point at valve one, and I'll say valve one shutting, and then I'll shut the valve. So like so everything's in place to make sure that the procedures are followed, so that we can continue to operate and have the public's trust. And then what was another thing that I was going to mention? Just with the whole, everyone a lot of times here in nuclear power, once again, they're scared of radiation. Like when I'm out at sea, like the people, like everyone else on the surface, like all the civilians, like you guys receive more radiation than I do. Like you receive, being out in the sun, you receive more radiation than I do. It's like out at sea, we have a bunch of shielding in place, and we have like I said, policies to minimize our time and all that when we're around the radiation, and we even have this little counter that we keep on us at all times.
Yeah.
The only time you don't wear it is when you're showering, but you have this like thing on you. It measure how much radiation you're getting. And
is that the dosimeter?
The dosimeter, yes, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
ELDs, and we have it, and then everyone at the end of it, like we turn it in, and then they count them afterwards, and it's usually next to nothing.
Gotcha.
But so that's it as far as the, like I said, and there's a bunch of other different things I could bring up about just being out at sea in general. But is there any specific themes you want to go for right now?
So I mean, like one of the main questions I've been asking is this, just to speak to you, the person personally, as like with Gerald, I asked this: who do you say you are?
Who do I say I am? It's an interesting question. So I guess I'm a person that I want to help people to, because I'm in speaking as well. So I want to help people to, specifically sailors, to achieve their like the best versions of themselves. That's what my goal in life is. Just because being out at sea, being in the military, I've seen how people, and especially people in the military, can kind of get this sense of just not really being our own person. We can kind of like dissociate from the world and not really have any purposes or ambitions. Like the perfect example, I could ask someone on the boat, like, what do you do if there's a fire? What do you do if there's a flooding? And they'll be able to rattle off, a bunch of different things. They'll know, okay, I'm going to show up here. I know that I'm going to be holding this extinguisher. I expect this announcement to be made. They'll know all these things about the procedure with regards to answering for a fire, flooding. But I can ask the exact same person, hey, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And they'll be like, maybe I'll stay in, maybe I'll leave, maybe I'll start a business, maybe I'll go back to school. We know a ton when it comes to like our work, but as far as our lives are concerned, we don't really have an idea in that. And the reason for that is because, procedures, casualty response, all this stuff has been drilled into us. And so, but as far as our own lives are concerned, that stuff isn't stressed as much. And so you have a lot of people who don't really have any goals or ambitions. They might claim to have some ideas, but we're not actively acting on those ideas. And so if you have people who may have a bunch of ideas, but they're not actively acting on them, and they kind of just feel like they're being controlled because they have someone telling them where they have to show up, what they have to be wearing, what to do when you get there, we kind of lose our sense of freedom. And so we kind of just like give up on our own ambitions that we may have. And so this causes a lot of stress. And so that's kind of that's what I want. That's my mission as far as what I want to do with my career, is just lower the stress of sailors, because as soon as we like get focused, as soon as we have a specific end goal in mind as
Yeah.
far as our lives, then things begin to take shape. We can then begin to structure our day accordingly, and people
Gotcha.
are end up being a lot more enjoyable to be around, because there's like a ton of people in the military who like they're kind of just dissociated from their jobs, not
Hmm.
really caring, just kind of clocking in, clocking out, just doing their routine, just
Yeah.
standing watch the exact same way, because they don't really care that much. We hear it a ton about people saying, I don't get paid enough to care about that, or like
Which is
so like,
kind of sad, but it's that's the reality of it.
like we do still like we do our jobs, but a lot of times people we just keep up with it like just enough to like people just like do like I think I've read it in the book several times. Just like people like to end up being just enough employees, like they do everything just good enough, and so
Yeah.
while just good enough may keep everyone safe and keep the boat moving and stuff like that, just good enough isn't going to do much for our sense of self worth and well being,
Right.
because over time slowly erodes at us, and then that ends up manifesting itself in some pretty disturbing ways later on. So that's one
And
thing that helps to get in the way of,
got
because
you.
I believe that if everyone had a sense of purpose and like what they and something that they wanted to accomplish, we'd be a
Hmm.
lot more enthusiastic about our jobs, and we would spend our time on the boat when we're out at sea talking about like our goals and our ambitions and different strategies to get there, as
Right.
opposed to what we normally talk about, which is stuff like, oh, what are you doing when you get back,
Right.
or like naming movies, or having very irrelevant conversations, often inappropriate conversations about different things. So like
Hmm.
just these nonsensical conversations rather than uh, things that really matter. Like once, I remember I was at a sea, and I walked into a legit conversation that people were having about religion, and they were like going back and forth, like respectful, listening to each other's opinions, giving their own
Hmm.
stuff. And I was like really impressed, because you do not walk across that very often. Like you'll
Right.
quite often you'll walk upon a conversation where someone's arguing, oh yeah, you're wrong because of this, and now we're listening to each other. But like I said, people
Right.
who have a mission in life, you become more respectful of others and their opinions. Whereas if you're kind of just bored and angry with life, you're just going to be more animalistic in terms of your approach. So
Yeah.
that is an exceedingly long way, winded way of saying that. That's what I want. I want to help to improve the culture of the military through limiting stress. That usually results from lack of purpose and direction in life.
I think that's a great goal. And I, like what you mentioned, I feel like I'm seeing it more and more because like the group that we're in, Breathe University, and especially like the a niche part of it being on the chameleon call, which is part of like the DISC assessment, where you look at like the 4 personality traits, where you have the DISC, and the chameleons are like the S personality, which is like people that are supportive and that have a certain pacing preference. And a lot of times, like people that are of that uh, what's the word? People that are wired in that way, they usually conform to procedures more quickly because it's like you want to improve the world, you want to make things kind of go along for the best. But to your point, unless you have a purpose for yourself outside of like the job that you have, or better yet, even like the work that you do, because that's something that I heard somebody say. There's a difference between your job and your work. Like you can be fired from your job, but your work nobody
Mm-hmm.
can take from you. And like having something like that's what this is for me. Like this is kind of like my work where I'm able to facilitate conversations between me and somebody else where they have a chance to speak their mind without being um, edited or just like, oh, say this, don't say that, do this, don't do that. It's like, no, just say what you have to say. If you have to say it in long form, that's why we have this. If we want to cut it up later and just be like, okay, here's a short story about what nuclear engineering is, here's a story about what it means to have a purpose in your life. I think there's value in that because just yesterday I went to Walmart and I'm walking through and I just see like different people are in different stages of their lives, but I think when you have exposure to like valuable information that helps push you forward, you kind of have a different outlook and perspective on life. So where it may be raining, usually earlier this year when it was raining, I was just like just kind of get in this depressive state. And a lot of times, some people make it feel like, oh, it's okay to be there. Like you start complaining, you start grumbling, like you start taking on that energy and everything. It just covers you like a wet blanket. And before it's like you wouldn't want to be covered by a wet blanket, but since it's becoming more and more normalized, like you're just like, oh, okay, well, they're doing it. Why don't I just do that? And it's like, no, like you don't, that's a slippery slope. Like as soon as you go down that way, like you'll find yourself laying in bed with the lights off weeks at a time, or you'll find yourself missing work for months at a time and wondering like, how in the world did I get here? And it all started from like you letting in little things, you not taking care of your well-being, like you not eating regularly, sleeping normally. It's like, hey, even if your schedule's out of whack, like if you can carve in 45 minutes in the day to take a nap, or just like shut down or shut out certain things, that gives you control over your life. But if you're letting somebody run your life or tell you like you have to do this, you have to do that, like some parts of it are true. If you signed up for a job, there are parts of the job that you have to do. But if you're working at a certain job and you feel that that's the only job you can have, I think you're kind of telling yourself a lie, or maybe nobody's ever told you that you don't have to be stuck at Walmart, Waffle House, Wendy's, like wherever it is that you work. It's like you do what you can with what you have. And I mean, hopefully somebody comes along and helps you. And usually that's the case. Like when you're moving, like from the time that I started this podcast, I launched it, like I started recording in August and like picked up speed in September, and actually put out the first one October 1st, just to have like a consistent day. And from the time that I got better with like putting stuff out, being consistent, posting online, like using social media, going back to like the calls that they have on Wednesday and say, okay, like how do I do this? Like I ask the question, I get an answer back. It's like, okay, now I go and implement it. The more that I'm doing that, I asked for help with editing. I got help editing. And I think not this week, but the following week, like we already made a plan to say, okay, I'll send you 4 episodes. We'll chop it up, look at it the Friday before, and then we kind of have a dialogue. So I'm like, okay, like I don't have to panic about putting that out at the last second. But I think I also went on a long tangent there. But I think just the fact that you've identified that wanting to make purpose within the military more of a thing and kind of shift the culture a little bit, I think that's really important, because it speaks personally to yourself, where you've seen you kind of lose your way and getting caught up on a test, which although while it's important, it's not more important than your person, your personality.
Yeah, you actually spoke on 2 different things. I'm gonna write both of them down, and then second thing you said I wanted to touch on. Oh, you just got done talking about. The first thing you said I wanted to kind of almost how you said like they made kind of like depression being the normal, so I wanted to assess that.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that or something else that you said closer to the end.
Like about purpose, or people like not knowing the difference between their job or just kind of taking what was given to them.
Yeah, conforming. So the thing where you said we talking about how like if you don't watch what you're taking in, then you're gonna slowly just slide into a negative state. And that's a huge thing I see, especially in the military. Like if I go around and I ask people how they're doing. Like if I say how are you doing, I'm gonna hear 1 of 3 responses. I'm gonna hear I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm here, or a very sarcastic, oh, I'm living the dream or living somewhere. There, like that's code for like I really hate life right now. And
right.
Like what's crazy is that when someone's in a good mood, they're like, oh, what are you so happy about? It's like, oh, I'm doing great today. Oh, wow, that's like because we've normalized being miserable. When someone's in a good mood, then that's brought in a question. Like that seems like, whoa, like what's this person on? Like why do they feel so good? Why
right.
And so it scares people whenever they hear someone that's actually in a good mood. one of the things I despise hearing is that people saying, "Oh, I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist." Like believing
Mhm.
that pessimism is realism, I think would technically still be pessimism. Like
Yeah.
just the idea that you you believe that things are going to be you could believe that things are going to be negative. Like that's you're kind of just thinking it into existence. Like if you're constantly looking for something that's going to be wrong,
Yeah.
you're going to be like you're going to find things that are wrong. But like even if it's wrong, like does that thought serve you? Does thinking
Right.
things in the case of like building like that's like a perfect thing. I should turn this into like a course. I'm like so
Yeah.
this is like a
Yeah.
perfect
This is like a little sneak peek for people.
like so there's a certain situation in which it pays to uh, be pessimistic. Like when we're building a reactive plan, because one of the reasons why we have all these procedures and contingencies in place is because things could go wrong. So when they were
Right.
designing the plan, they said, okay, well, what could go wrong here? Okay, we'll put
Mhm.
this. Okay, what could go wrong there? Okay, we'll add that switch there. Like
Right.
they continually were pessimistic in that sense, and that they always that they can continuously look for things that could possibly go wrong, but
Right.
that they had a reason for doing so. The reason for that was so that they could build a system that could keep the public safe.
Right.
Me complaining about, the fact that I have work today or the fact that my schedule got moved, that doesn't solve anything. It doesn't move my schedule back. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It doesn't solve anything. It really is just me complaining. Now, what we've done is a lot of times, like I said, because we've normalized being miserable. When
Mhm.
someone complains, like everyone just jumps on in, like, "Oh man, you're right. Yeah, this sucks.
Yeah.
Oh man, I like."
It's
And
like
that
misery
slowly,
loves company.
yeah, misery loves company, and so that slowly puts. A lot of times, if someone complains, I'll just like look at them because I don't want to nod, I don't want to smile, I don't want to join in because if you decide to be miserable, I have not conceded to be part of that decision. Like, I do not want to also be miserable, so I don't
Mhm.
want to join in on that because that is just draining. Like
Oh yeah.
complaining and taking in that information and being around negative people,
Yeah.
that drains your mind because it's just exhausting having to deal with that negative energy. And
Right.
we've all like experienced the part where like someone's called us, someone who we don't want to talk to because of their negative energy, and we just stare at the phone, right?
Mhm.
We just stare like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not picking this up. No, well, why do we do that? We don't pick up because we don't want to talk to them. But we
Mhm.
also decline because we know that if we decline, they're going to know that we declined. And therefore, it's going to be another thing they have to deal with later. So we're just extremely passive about it because we want to have the minimum amount of interaction possible. Because,
Say it's
hey,
not so. Say it's not so.
like, hey, we've all done it before. It's like, yeah, we don't want to deal with that. So, and that's the exact same thing. Like, the reason why some people are miserable is because they go into work an environment where being miserable is normalized, where
Yeah.
there are constantly people complaining all of the time,
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
the time, something. Like you will not go into work without hearing somebody complain about something.
Yeah.
And that just wears down, just makes the environment a lot more harsh to be in. Like there's
Right.
something I was thinking about the other day when I was at work. I've never gone out to a volunteer thing for church and had everybody be miserable there. It's like, oh
Mhm.
man, can't believe we got to hand out these clothes. Can't believe we got to hand out these homeless people like him. But no, everyone there was always super hyped. It's like, all right, man, we're gonna go there. We're gonna get out there. We're gonna
Yeah.
serve. Awesome. We're out there. We're laughing. We're making jokes. We're saying, oh, I think this will look good on you. Like we're in super good mood. But
Mhm.
at work, everyone's just like, man,
Gotta go to work. It's Monday, man.
got a case of the Mondays. Like, oh well, today's gonna like there's like legit. Okay, here's what happened. Like I had this conversation tonight,
Mhm.
and there was someone at my work who had like they were basically upset because it was their supposed to be their day off,
Mhm.
but everyone got that day off. Like so, the person made
Right.
plans for Sunday. They could
Yeah.
still they, they could still follow through with those plans that they had, but they were upset because everyone else got that same day off as well. So their day off had less meaning because everyone else had. So just
Mm.
you get a day off, you get to do whatever you plan on doing, but you're still miserable just because of this unrelated reason. Like they could
Yeah.
have just not told you everyone else had off, and then you would
Right.
have. But so yeah,
Gotcha. But I
you
mean,
can
it's
do
like they
whatever.
attached their day off. They had a certain value to that, and then
And
they
that,
attach a part of their value of having their day off to, oh, everybody else gets a day off. It's like this was supposed to be my day, and it's like just because other people got off, that doesn't change your day. Like and I think you guys touched on this before when you talk about boundaries, where it's like you really have to separate yourself from other people, where you understand like you start at your skin, like you start and you stop at your skin, and then other times like that's the most basic boundary, and then there's other things that you have to put in place like emotionally, physically, distance and things like that, where it's like this is me, that's Gerald, like, and let's not confuse the two. But to your point, like people just kind of get caught up in this like this storm or this twister that comes around. It's like, oh, like negative thinking, and it's this. But one thing I wanted to kind of touch on, I don't know if it'd be a question, but I think, like you said, there's a place and a time for like pessimism, or there's a place and time for like negativity. When you're trying to create something to solve a problem, you have to attack the ways in which that works. But other times it's like people that are positive a lot of times may get a bad rep to like, oh, like what's so great about today? It's like, oh, it's a great day. Like, oh, what's great about it? Like, it's like, okay. But other times you have people that may just be focused on always being positive, but they don't have a sense of awareness to look at things objectively to say, okay, this is bad, but I'm going to do something anyways. And I think sometimes people want that explanation, but it's like, hey, it's not really my job to explain to you every single thing I'm doing in my life. It's just, if I choose to be happy, I choose to be happy. I have my personal reasons for doing that. And if you want to know, absolutely, let's sit down and have a conversation one-on-one versus like, I've got to stand up on a podium and say, hey, everybody, hey, world, this is why I'm happy. This is what's going on. Like, does that resonate with you, or what do you make of that?
So when you mentioned like about people who just say that they're happy all the time without really without really knowing why, I had heard of this term called toxic positivity, or it's called someone who's being positive all the time. And it was like a friend of mine, she talked about it. I can't really dive that deep into it because I haven't looked into as much as I have, but it's just the idea of like you can admit when things are wrong, like to deny and bury feelings. You couldn't
Right.
have negative feelings, but like it's just what you choose to do with that information. You can choose to dwell on them, which a lot of people tend to do, or you
Mm-hmm.
can acknowledge like, so like, being positive does not mean like, you know, blinding yourself to what is wrong. Like there can
Right.
be legitimate things wrong, but it just means viewing it in terms of the long term. Like, well, what does this do? Perfect
Mm-hmm.
example. So I mentioned earlier about how my first time through the pipeline, I failed that final oral board, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now,
Right.
once again, going back to that other earlier discussion about how what the Navy does is like they fit the punishment to the crime. So because I failed that board, it took the system that I really messed up on, that I did poorly on, and I had to draw that system a lot of times. I had to draw that system, like drew that system during those 2 weeks. I had to draw the system like for someone else. So I had to draw it no less than 10 times, like and 10 times like for someone, and then also like I don't know how many times like by myself practicing it. So I had to draw that system a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like at the time it felt miserable. I didn't enjoy it, but I just still continued to draw that system. Well, a few years later, I remember I got asked a question about that same system. So yeah, okay, so you're going to qualify this, now you have to draw the system. I was like, oh, okay, bet. Like I knew exactly, because I had that earlier failure. I
Yeah.
now knew how to draw that system perfectly. And now, like whenever I get asked a question about that system, or like somebody comes to me for a checkout on that system, I'm like, yo, make sure you ask me, because I know a lot about the system, because I had to draw it several times.
Mm-hmm.
I had to draw it several times. I had to talk about it a lot, so I know a lot about the system. And that's kind of like taking a poor experience, me failing that system for the oral board, and kind of looking at it in long term. Okay, like, you know, I went through this failure. Okay, it sucks. Okay, it's a negative feeling. What can I develop from this? Okay,
Right.
well now I'm in a position, because I failed it. I can learn a lot more. I think we've all heard E talk about that. It's like, oh, like, you know, I went through this, so I can turn this into a book, or I can
Yeah.
turn this into a video course, so I can turn this into a speech. Like, rather than just dwelling on the moment of how miserable you are,
Yeah.
looking long term and seeing how can I use this as a teaching moment, so
Mm-hmm.
that I can help other people. That does wonders to improve your sense of optimism, because you're slowly seeing that like negative things are just problems that you can solve, and then if you
Right.
can solve for you can then help other people solve that same problem that
Exactly.
their own.
That's a great point. And one question I would ask you as a follow up to that, um, what what changed for you, or like how did you make that shift to say like, okay, like I'm beating myself up, like I didn't make this test, like crap, why am I doing this 100 times, like oh geez, like what took you from like the negative where you focused on the problem to where you saw the problem as a solution, like when somebody presented it to you again as like, oh, like I don't know what to, like how to do this, and then for some reason you think, oh, I've done this, like I can help you, versus like, oh yeah, it sucks to suck, man, good luck. Like how did that mindset kind of shift for you, or how did you go from failing the test to having to redo it, like retrain yourself over drawing that system, to um, seeing the positive out of that lesson and then taking it to teach to somebody else that needed help with the same thing that you struggled with?
So, like I said, after I failed the exam or failed the board, like I said there was a 2 week period in which I continually studied those different systems that I did poorly on, and then worked
Okay.
on, and then I ended up passing the second time. And so I was like, okay, at first I was like, okay, that was a relief.
Mm,
That 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 sucked. Whatever. But now it's over.
mm,
And like I said, those few years later, actually, it was maybe a year and a half when I had to draw the system again. Like just being told that I had to draw it again, like I kind of shifted back into that mode of okay, this is happening. What can I do? And because during that 2 week period where I was absolutely focused on that goal, hearing that I had to draw the system again, I shifted into the mindset of okay, like this is a challenge and I have to overcome this. So, and when I was like drawing, I'm like, oh, like I started to get back into the groove. And because I was, kind of enjoying drawing system now because I knew so much about it, then I said, oh man, this is actually enjoyable for me. And then I realized that there are still people that don't know how to draw that system as well. So
mm,
I can have like me, someone who I believe like in terms of like my natural gifts. I think one of my natural gifts was teaching. Like I enjoy taking complex issues
mm,
and like breaking them down and so that people can understand those things. So I I got a system that I had previously because I'd been on both sides of it. I'd been on the side of not knowing how the system works and the
mm,
side of knowing how the system works. And I have the ability to like bridge the gap. So I was like, okay, here's a problem people have. Here's something that I've experienced that can help me. That is put me on the other side. I can help bridge the gap and give that people that same feeling of accomplishment of getting over to that other side. And so because
mm.
especially being as chameleons, we love helping, we love supporting people. So I think we might have a slight bias in our favor of like, or not bias, but like slight advantage of because we're naturally inclined to help support people. We're always kind of looking for ways that we can help support our friends. And so
Right.
that's something that I want to like. I said, okay, I can use this experience. Once I got out of my own head, once I stopped being selfish
Yeah.
and like saying woe is me, like just focusing so, and that's what gets a lot of people. That's a good like I said,
Yeah.
if we just focus solely on ourselves,
Mm,
we don't see the bigger picture. And if we don't see the bigger picture, then we're just gonna sit in action, not really doing anything. And
right.
so that's one thing that really pushes me, like in terms of everyone with their gift. Like
Yeah.
there's one thing that kind of has been pushing me. Like there's someone out there who needs your gift. Like there's someone out there who needs that book that you want to write or that course that you're gonna shoot. And
Yeah.
so by you delaying that, then someone else is going to have whatever solution they need delayed. And this could be
Yeah.
very costly. But like I'm so glad that like E didn't delay like starting like BU and all that. He just
Right.
was like,
Right.
I
Because
don't feel like
yeah,
it.
it
And
seems like it was timely because I think they started it in 2013. And I guess every now and then I've got to be reminded not to use acronyms, but whenever we say E, it's Eric Thomas for anyone listening. And I think he started Breathe University in 2013. And I think literally that's the year that I came across his When You Want to Succeed as Bad as You Want to Breathe video, because I was struggling working a technician job while I'm going to engineering school. And I'm sitting here doing temp work, which no knock against temp work. It's just like um, working on call and then going back to college where it's like one of the top universities or whatnot in the country. And you have people talking about, oh yeah, I'm just sitting out here hanging out, got my feet up on the desk, air conditioned, and I'm making like 25 bucks an hour, like for a college student. Dude, that's great. Like you basically do that for 40 hours for a couple months, like over the summer even, and you've got tuition paid for a good bit. And I'm sitting here feeling down on myself that I'm only making $11 an hour. And of course I get per diem. I was just excited to make money because before I kind of worked for free doing landscaping, and then I worked at a coffee shop for a few years. So I was like, hey, you went from making nothing to making like maybe $6 an hour to 8. Now you're making 11. I'm like, oh wow, I'm really doing it. And then I get per diem and they get to put me up in a hotel. But then I see this person over here like, oh, I don't even have to do that much work. I just chill. Like maybe they have me draw something, but it's pretty basic. There's nothing to it. And I'm over here like crawling on my hands and knees, getting into tanks, like storage tanks, going like crawling on top of dryer, what do they call them? Dryer cans that they use at paper plants, and like scanning bolts and like running a crawler system across it. And I'm like, I must be like the dumbest engineer out here. Everybody else, they're over there, they're doing design work, they're doing this. All the while, I didn't realize that what I was doing is very essential to engineering, because once you draw it on paper, you have to build it. And once you build it, you have to inspect it, not only to say that it's up to quality standards, but over the lifetime of that thing. That's why they keep calling the inspectors back, because for insurance purposes, they have to say what we built here is legitimate and it's worth the money that, say, a federal government's going to give us. Or like when we write our taxes, it's like, here's what we've done to ensure that we're not just dumping money out. And I didn't get to see that until after the fact. And I really didn't get out of that mindset for me until I talked to a friend of mine that was also going to the same school that I was going to. And um, like we had a similar background. I'm from Cameroon, originally born in West Central Africa. It's like east of Nigeria. And he's from Burkina Faso. So it's like West Africa, a little bit further from me. But
Capital.
like, got you. So you're familiar with it.
I just remember that because that was, I don't know, I just remember that from geography class, and I was like,
Got you.
it's pretty funny. That's a pretty fun name to say.
Yeah. But it's like, just like for me, like he helped me kind of get out of that mind state. And he told me that, like, since we were in the same position, we're going to the same school for the same degree. And he was like, dude, like, um, I use motivation. And I was like, what's motivation? He's like, you go on YouTube and you just type in motivation, like those videos and those people that they put together. It just helps me kind of like get the energy to get out here, because it's like, one, you're a foreigner. So people are already looking at you like, what the heck are you doing here? Two, like people kind of mistrust you, or they kind of feel inferior to you because they're like, oh, so you got a degree. What, you don't think I'm good enough because I didn't get a degree? And I'm like, no, I didn't say that. I'm just here to learn. Like, if we got to pick up a grinder and clean off boiler tubes, like, I'll do that. Like, we had to teach temp workers how to use a grinder because they've never used it before. But at one point on a certain job, it was just taking way too long to teach them how to do it, where it was like, okay, you go here, you go here, you go here. And like, we just start knocking down areas where it's like, there's 60 tubes that you've got to do across. You got like 4 or 6 flights of stairs and like 120-foot big box boiler, which is just like a big oven that generates power for a power plant. And we just got up and we got it. Like that's what you did. You just work hard. You didn't think about it. But it really gets discouraging when the people around you in your circle, they're always talking down to you. They act like you don't have any sense. And I'm just like, okay, that's not what it is. And so that's kind of what I was asking you before. Like, is there one thing or like one person that like hits you in a way to where you were like, oh, okay, like I don't have to think this way. Like there's another option out there.
In terms of my, I think for a while, it was just being in, I mean, I think it was a lot of it was like I know everyone had their Eric Thomas moment. For me, it was like when I was up in up in New York back at the prototype training and the third phase I was telling you about, and I just I just wanted more. Like I didn't want to just continually just come into work.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, especially in the military, tend to do is to just come into work, do the
Mhm.
maintenance, stand and watch, complain the whole time. Work finishes and we go home. We like play Apex or Fortnite or like watch Netflix or a
Yeah.
movie, and then we eat and then go to bed. And it's kind of like the same. Like I didn't want to have an existence where I just
You're just floating.
where I wasn't enthusiastic about life. That's
Yeah.
that I absolutely feared. Like I did not want to just go through life about it because you're not serving anyone by that. Like I was going to be grow up to be absolutely miserable, and so
Mhm.
I think a big thing for me was just getting involved, more so involved with personal development and
Mhm.
like reading books. Like I read a few different books, but and I could go on a rant about some different things. It was like I just just the abridged version of the rant, the mini rant was just like actually applying what you read in books rather than just reading. Because a lot of times people just say, oh, they brag about, oh, I've read this book. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
the book where I'm like how much of the information have you actually applied to your life? Because I know
Right.
like
Right.
in terms of like, because I have like right here, I have like a whole lot of books. Like, let's say I have 100 units of information. Like
Mhm.
I've read 40 units of information and I've maybe applied 10, being very generous. A lot of times, like people want to buy a new book or think of, or
Yeah.
download this new plan or whatever. Like take the time to just apply this stuff like off the top of your head. There's things that you know that you should be doing that you
Right.
don't do. Start
Right.
with that. Then we can move on to different books. Obviously, that's
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to just touch on real quick was just
Gotcha.
actually applying the information that you know from books. So yeah, the just it wasn't really one specific thing of like
Yeah.
I said, Eric Thomas and Breathe University being around exposed to more people who had the mindset of actually improving
Right.
my life was a very big factor because a lot of times we can read books, but those like books aren't really like they say books are reliable. Like
Yeah.
a book is going to be your accountability partner, stuff like that.
Right.
So
Right.
being in an
Right.
environment where it's actually so I'm
Like a
sure you've
book
heard
is
of,
kind of. Sorry. Go ahead.
all right, am I good now?
Yeah. Yeah. You're good.
All right, so I'm sure you've heard of like just naturally we humans copy those around us. It's like a thing that we do. It's just a survival instinct. And the reason why is because, back in the day where we had to worry about different predators, it
Mhm.
was more of a like if you stick out, you're more likely to be picked off by a predator. So like
Right.
just
Right.
in terms of habit, human beings, we tend to act like those around us. Now that can work negatively or positively. It can
Mhm.
work. It's positive if there's a tiger prowling around, but it's
Yeah.
negative if I'm around people who are complaining consistently all the
Mhm.
time because I slowly become like them. So being in an environment like Breed University or having friends that are more oriented towards personal development, that's
Mhm.
puts me in the company of those who want to become more. So naturally, if I'm around them, then
Mhm.
I'm going to be want to improve myself because in that environment, improving yourself is the norm. There's no question why you're doing it. It's expected of you. Whereas in
Mhm.
the 99% of the world, people are just being victims, complaining about life, not really doing anything, not really making any moves.
Right.
That's an environment where trying to improve yourself is kind of like, well, what are you doing? Like that's weird. Why would you waste your time? And so
Yeah.
a big factor is being around, spending more time around people who are trying to become more like because if you spend more time around them, then that's who you're going to act more like, and then if you act more like them, then that's how you improve your life.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That's a great point. And like you said, the biggest thing for you was not like even if you decided to start reading books, you decided that I need to apply what I'm reading. And like I think I just got on the Chameleon call for the first time this year, and I think it maybe started last year. But the thing that really drew me to it was um, them going through a book like chapter by chapter and like actually studying it out. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. And I ended up getting the book, which was Boundaries at the time. And I was like, yeah, I identify with that, where it's that I either let people run roughshod over me, or I just don't feel like I respect myself enough to where somebody asks for something, I'm jumped to it. And then later I feel this resentment against that person. I'm like, why did I let them do that? And like somebody that cares about me be like, why do you keep repeating this process over and over again? Like, you don't need to let someone just treat you and say whatever to you. Like, you have rights yourself. Like, even me, they're like, hey, don't even let it come from me. Like, I've got things that I personally want, but if it's not of value to you, like, don't do that. And like, it would go in one ear and out the other, like go in one ear and out the other. And then finally I'm just like, okay, like stop. Like, I've gone to conferences, and like the most recent one I went to was Verified in August. And from going there, like I went with the intention of like, okay, I need to change my mind state. Like, I've been in this mode where like the quote unquote depression has like become a thing. Like, I know it's real, and like mental health is very important. But if you get stuck, like if somebody tells you that you're sick and you just agree to it, you're like, oh yeah, I'm sick. Oh yeah, I'm sick. And like, you don't do anything to get better or get unsick, like you're going to stay there for possibly forever. And that's not really of any help to you. And I think a lot of times people get a misconception of like, oh, I'm going to go talk to a shrink, or I'm going to go talk to a therapist, I'm going to go talk to this. Like, we kind of have this arrogance of like, what's this person going to tell me about me that I don't already know? Because it's like in your mind, or in my mind, I'm kind of sitting here concocting like, oh, I could fix this, I could fix that. But like you mentioned again, like a book will only give you so much information. It's not dynamic. It's like dynamic in the message that it gives you, but it's not going to like look over your shoulder and be like, oh, okay, like you said you were going to read me today, did you read me? Like, oh, you said you were going to apply this, did you apply that? And when you brought up the part about having an accountability partner, someone that actually like checks you and say, okay, like what is it that you want for your life? And it's like, if you don't know, why don't you know? And not just somebody to constantly be critiquing you, but someone to also encourage you when you're kind of down, and to have that the balance where it's like, I challenge you, but also I encourage you. Like, those are very powerful things that really drive to what you came up with, wanting to make like purpose meaningful in the military, in the Navy, to where other people can kind of walk with their heads up. And I've seen people like David Goggins and like other people where it's like, you gotta, like initially, like usually yeah, a lot of people might be turned off initially from like the language, but like one thing that I identify with whenever I listen to people, whether it's music or like interview like this, or just whenever people speak, I really try to understand like what they are at heart. And I really identify with them because, oh, did the audio go? Crap. I can't hear you for some reason. There, okay. There you go.
I got you.
Got you. Where did I cut out?
You you said a lot of times people might get turned off by the language, but like you just focus on what the message is. And
right. And I mean with David Goggins, for instance, like his message has just been kind of like, you really have to deal with yourself. Like, you really have to, like, there's things that like somebody else can't necessarily do for you, and there's a struggle that you have to deal with yourself. And I think he's maybe like an extreme version of it, where he said, okay, I'm going to become like the baddest man on the planet. But more so, it started internally with him. It's like, I'm going to be like the baddest me I can be. Like, I'm going to be the best version of myself. And every time that my body wants to say quit, I'm going to say no. And I'll just stay on this point because I could go on different tangents, and like people like to be contrarians or this or that, but whoever wants to be contrarian, I'll talk with them whenever that conversation comes up. But I just think it's really important to really challenge yourself and to just give yourself a reason for doing what you do. And one thing I can say is like, I'm sure I'm not getting any checks from Breathe University, but I guess if anything, I'm getting emotional checks, and I'm getting like, um, it just helps me personally. But I guess we'll be on the call here in 2 hours. But the main thing that I've gained from just seeing my environment differently, from actually applying the information, like from the time that I saw ET in 2013 to graduating by the end of the year and going to work in 2014, I started to not only ingest the information, but applying it like maybe 20% of the time or 10% of the time, like you said. And the main things that kind of changed were, okay, I need to evaluate the people in my life, like really like who's adding to me and who's taking away, and like who am I adding to and who am I taking away from. And I kind of had to make that separation. And then back to the work issue, it was like my job isn't working out. It's like it's good I have a job, but I know like I didn't see 100% the value in it, but at the same time I saw the value in myself, and I was like, I know what I'm worth, or I know at least that I'm worth better than where I'm at now. So at the end of it, I was like, I've done this job for 3 semesters, this is my last semester, and I need to be gone at the end of the year. I can't come back here full time. Like multiple people have already told me don't come back here because this is a dead end, and I was like, let me not be stupid and let me actually listen to them. And then the last thing was that in getting ready to graduate, I was like, aside from having this job, I've tried looking for other jobs, but I've just been unsuccessful. And I know somebody that was a close friend, and like that's the first person that I met when I got to the campus. And every semester, I would see her working for like a different company, and it would always be the company. She's like, "Oh, okay, I want to go to work with this company." Next thing I know, she's working with that company. It's like, how did it go? It was all right. Like, what are you gonna do next semester? I'll try something different. So I just went and I was like, "How did you do that?" And she gave me the information because I asked the question. She was like, "Oh, okay, like, well, whenever you do an interview, here's questions they might ask you, here's why they're asking you those questions, and here are the responses that you're looking for or that they're looking for. Like study this and you'll be good to go." And it's like, okay, so I noticed you have a pretty cool resume. Like, do you mind if I use yours as a template? Sure. And it's like, okay, hey, make sure you work on your LinkedIn profile. Just jump on mine and see what matches and use that. Like try to use similar language, similar verbiage. And I was like, oh, okay, like now I get it. And something that maybe triggered me specifically was the be obsessed with improvement video. I think he did that one in Australia, and I just watched that, and it just like came over me like, oh my god. Like I was just like, every video of his that you watch, these videos that you watch, is like you always feel like you want to run through a wall, but like every time I'll go back to it and I'll go back to it and I'll go back to it. But what really made a difference for applying stuff or changing my mindset was a video where he talked about having a crossover. And initially, as soon as he mentioned that reading was his crossover, I was ready to turn the video off. I was like I've been hearing this all my life. Like dad's always saying, readers are leaders. You got to read, you got to read, you got to read. And I was like, I'm reading textbooks every single day. Like I go home, I've got to read the textbook. Over the summer, I can't go out and play. I've got to read the textbook. It's like I'm getting made fun of for just being a nerd, but I'm not a good nerd. Like I'm not, like I'm struggling to be smart, but it doesn't feel like I'm that smart. But the first book that E mentioned was like Who Moved My Cheese? And he's talked about it being specific to helping your mindset. And I was like, okay, it's a strange enough title. I never heard of it before, but let me try and read it. And he said it can help my mindset. Like I was willing to give it a shot just because somebody not only told me to read, but they gave me a specific reason to read and an outcome that I would gain from it. So I was like, those are guidelines I can kind of run with. And as soon as I read that, I was like, okay, like I like that. And then he had like 3 or 4 other books, and I was just like, okay, I read that one or listened to that one, and that I listened to the next one, and I listened to the next one, and like I just got so excited. I was going hard, like and doing everything, but then I kind of got tapped out a little bit because I needed to apply, and every single book that I started to read was like apply, 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 apply. So I was like, okay, I got to pump the brakes and like go back to step one and like level up slowly. But that was my mini long rant.
That's I definitely agree with you. Well, because if you look, was it to know and not do is really to not know. So
Yeah,
like if you know and you don't do, there's no way of like you're gonna achieve, the person who knows and doesn't do is gonna achieve the same results as someone who doesn't know in the first place.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it doesn't matter like if you knew it, did you act on it?
right.
Because if someone, someone had the idea, I think we heard on the podcast, or CJ's podcast, that CJ said like he had the idea for like Uber or something like that. I think that was one of the jokes that he made on the, like he had the idea for Uber before Uber, but did he like want to actually act on it? No, he didn't want to act on it. So someone else also had the idea, so they acted on it. So like
Yeah,
if you know and you actually apply, you're gonna see some real results rather than just saying, "Oh yeah, I knew that," or "I knew," like, okay,
right,
like,
right. And this
but
is a prime example of that because, like I was trying to say earlier, I probably got off on a tangent, but being in Breathe University since 2016, that's 3 years now. I think I joined September or October of 2016. And like, I liked the information that I was getting, but specifically this year, I went to the Verify conference to kind of get out of my funky mind state. And when they ask you to like write down, I think he asked like write down what it is that you want to get done, like what's something that's a dream or a goal of yours. And I was like, um, I want to start a business. Like I want to be able to create something that I'm able to generate money for myself. And as crazy as that idea may seem, because I've just been used to, you go to school, you get a job, make sure that you get a good paying job so that you're taken care of. That was the mindset. But like the more I'm around people that are entrepreneurial like and are applying, creating businesses and things like that, I was like, it may be hard, but I've got to do it. And it's like I wrote it down August 7th of 2019 and I kind of like put it away and hid it. But then that idea, since it was written down, like it just kept festering. And then as I made the step to like record, like got scared of it, like came back and it's like I kept starting and stopping, but slowly inching towards this to where finally I was like, just stop, like stop trying to play it safe. Like just go buck wild, like ask people if they want to record. And if they say no, they say no. But at least I talked to my first recording, and I was just talking with my friend Theo. Like we met on the men's prayer line, and we just talk regularly. So we already had kind of like a rapport built up. And he was like, "Oh, okay, you want to do podcasts? I'm doing a podcast too." And I saw some of his stuff, and I was like, "Oh, it looks like you've been doing it for a minute." He's like, "Yeah, I started last year." We just kind of repping back and forth, but like having that accountability or people that you can bounce things off of and actually deciding to say, okay, now I'm going to step out whether I know what I'm doing or not is like that's been huge for me, and that's what brought us to today.
oh, that's been a giant theme throughout my life. Like I've overcomplicated every single thing you can possibly imagine. Everything from uh, asking questions in class to overthinking, uh, like talking to women. Like there's, I remember, perfect example. I was taking this class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a woman who I like saw frequently there, and I was like, man, like I don't know, like I don't know what kind of approach I should use. I don't know how I
Yeah.
should approach it. I want to seem weird. I don't want to seem creepy.
Right.
Like
Right.
the conversation, and I ended up asking her out to dinner,
Mm-hmm.
and she said no. However,
Mm-hmm.
comma,
Yeah.
like I did not regret asking her out. I did not regret that at all in the least, because if I didn't, and like we ended up like both leaving town or something, I would have been like, man, what would have happened if I would have
Yeah.
asked her?
I wish I would have done that.
Yeah, that would have been in the back of my head like for the longest. I was like, man, if I
Right.
want to ask, I would know what you know. Like I'm much like in terms of stress, I'm far more stressed from the opportunities that I never acted on than
Mm.
from the things that I act on and fail. Because if I act on and fail, I'm like, all right, well, I take
Yeah.
that loss, I'll move on from that. But if I don't know, it's just like the what ifs. That's what really kills you. So that's a big driving force for me because I don't want it to have a whole bunch of what ifs because
Right.
I already have plenty of it. I already have
Yeah.
plenty of what ifs how because of how because of the the low driving score or whatever
Yeah.
because
Well,
of
I mean,
how
of even the nature of your work, like everything has to be case by case. If this happens, what if this happens? But it's like you have procedures to follow with it.
oh, oh yeah, absolutely. We one thing I was looking at is reading this book and the author described about how like if you're constantly worrying about a certain situation and taking a certain risk, okay, like just throw up the absolute worst possible scenario
Yeah.
that could go wrong from the situation. It's like, okay, could you survive that? Could you figure out a way back from that? I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could figure out a way. All right, well then, go ahead
Yeah.
and do it.
Right.
The
Right.
worst possible scenario, it's not going to happen. But even if it does, you already have a way back from it. So
Hmm.
anything that could possibly happen between there is just okay. You can absolutely go ahead and do it. And so,
Right.
but the thing is, this society, like with the news and with
Yeah.
social media, we're just conditioned to be afraid because
Yeah.
we're just slowly conditioned over time to just be more and more passive about life because when we're passive about life, then we're just going to continually pay for like entertainment and other stuff that helps us to escape because you don't want to actually deal with real life. And so
Right.
if you're willing to take more risks, you're gonna take some losses, you're gonna take some embarrassment, but over time you're going to have some successes and moreover you're going to have things that both you and other people can learn from through those experiences. And that's kind of what our duty is. Our duty is to not just sit back and just be
Hmm.
passive, but actively search for ways to improve. Because when we improve ourselves, then then we can help improve others. So like let's take an example, right?
Hmm.
So let's say there was some challenge that I was afraid to do, right?
Yeah.
Some challenge I was afraid to do. I give up on it like 3 years. I give up on that challenge. 3 years later,
Hmm.
a friend of mine comes up with that same challenge in his life, right?
Yeah.
I am now unable to help him. A friend of mine has an issue
Hmm.
with this challenge, but because I chickened out 3 years earlier,
Yeah.
I can't help him. And so now he has to go through more pain and more suffering because I was afraid of this. So
Hmm.
instead, we take the approach like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take this challenge. I'm gonna go ahead and take this challenge later
Yeah.
on, like I said, with the whole me feeling the oral board. On the other side of it, now I know what it took. Now I know how to get through it. Now I know how to perform that process. Now I
Hmm.
can help make the road easier for other people. Whereas if I chickened out or if I wasn't sure and I didn't act on it,
Right.
I'm powerless to help anyone. If you have an opportunity and you don't act on it, you learn nothing.
Right.
Nothing. Learn zero things from not acting on the opportunity. If you act on it, sure you might fail. You might fail absolutely miserably, but you will still learn something. There's something that you can pull away from that situation to either try again or as a caution. You can give this to the next person. It's like, okay, I failed on this because I messed up this part, so watch
Yeah.
out for here. And
Right.
that's what we do. Like we're on for back in college, like taking exams. Like if like one class took the exam first, hey, well, what should I look out? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
make sure to watch out for this question or make sure you study this
Right.
table.
Right.
It's it's a thing that we can do. If you go for a challenge, you can help others from your experience in that. In
Gotcha.
that regard.
That's a great point. I'm glad you said that, and it's funny that I'm glad that we were able to start how we started and get here towards the end. And just like the way you just put that there, I think it's powerful. And before we even spoke, like I just knew you for the chameleon color. I didn't know that you were in the Navy or that you worked in nuclear power. And I was like, wow, you explained it probably much better than I could have explained it, and just kind of giving the reality of it where I may just talk about, oh, I'm having to do this thing so that they can get in here and they do whatever they need to do. And you actually being on the operational side, you say like, okay, like here's the importance of what's going on, but like let's step away from the abstract, I guess as you would say, or something that's like the nitty gritty, and let's just talk on like the bare bones of things, like what's really the purpose here. The purpose is talking about you, the individual, and like what really matters to you. And um, yeah, like once you understand what matters to you and you take chances on yourself and you step through life and you say, okay, I'm going to do this regardless of whether it works or not. Like when I do something, I'm going to get like some feedback. And then from that feedback, I'm going to make another decision. And yeah, I think E may have said it or somebody may have said it that success, however you define it, is going from one failure to another failure without losing intensity. And I just been reading Og Mandino, the greatest salesman, and I think it's the greatest salesman in the world. And he talks about with the very first scroll that's in the book, it says that success is defined many ways by different people, but failure is always defined one way. That failure is man's inability to do exactly what he says he's going to do. Like being able to realize what you want to realize. Like you ask anybody, that's a quote unquote failure, that you didn't do what you said or you didn't do what you wanted to do. So in order to avoid that, you can do many things. And even when you do something in an attempt to achieve what you want, you're doing something. Whether it works or not, it's not a failure. It's just like you taking the action is more important than you just saying, well, I could have, or I would, or hey, I would have built Uber. Like I knew that.
That's actually huge. Like I was thinking about that. Like people, you always hear people say like, oh, if I cared enough, I could get in, crazy good shape, or I could start that. Like people love talking about how easy they could have done something, or they could do
Right.
something. Because talking is a lot easier than actually
Right.
breaking down and actually doing it. And if you want to accomplish anything, you have to be willing to deal with that failure. Like something that they talk about is something I'm thinking about today. I'm actually currently I'm starting blogging again, and I'm writing a blog post currently. And
Okay.
something that I did before, and I'm still doing now, is that a lot of times when you're faced with a blank page, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people get intimidated by that. I mean, that's it's a famous thing, the blank page. I hate staring at it. It's like, all right, because why?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing there yet. You have nothing to work from. So
Right. Right.
and I long ago accepted the fact that I'm never going to do it perfect on the first try. So the
Yeah.
very first thing I do when I'm writing a post, I just vomit like all the ideas that I want to get out in that post. I'd like write this, like start typing this paragraph. I might stop in the middle of a paragraph or a sentence, go on to the next idea, and then okay, then my next time through, maybe the next day or something like that, I'm like okay, and I can build off this idea, and then I get a rough skeleton, and then I slowly like fill in the gaps and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden I have a post. So it's like not
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do it perfectly the first time, but just several steps and going through it failure after failure because I didn't have the post done.
Yeah.
I slowly built up that post that I want. That's true for anything. You're not going to get it. Trust me, I have tried. I have absolutely tried to get things perfect on the first shot.
Yeah.
Is it theoretically possible? Yes. Is it going to happen? No. Like
Yeah.
you you should not conduct your life under the assumption that you will do things perfectly. Because like there's always someone that's going to say, oh, well, like, this person did it perfectly. It's like, okay.
Good for them.
Like,
Yeah.
if you wouldn't take, like, it's like, the 1 in 1,000 that
Mm-hmm.
person is able to do it. Like if I told you that, hey, I want you to go on this, roller coaster, and there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that you'll survive. You would
Yeah.
stay on that roller coaster. You would not go on this. Like, no, that's a terrible chance to ever go on the roller coaster if I only have 1 in 1,000 chance of surviving. Like it's that exact same percentage. The
Yeah.
1 in 1,000 person that achieves it on the first try, you should not go for that route. You should not go for that methodology. You should instead do what the other, 99.9% of people do is
Right.
try, fail, okay, what can I do better? Try, fail, okay, what can I do better? And then eventually you actually make it.
Right. That's awesome. Well, I think you want to wrap up there.
Yeah, do you have any other questions, any other things you want to touch on?
No, I mean, I'd written some like generic questions down, but I think the way the conversation is gone so far, I like where we've kind of gotten to, and I want to just leave it there. Not like we said a lot of information, and I think it like where it's at is good, and like in the future we may maybe come back and have like another conversation on this, or even talk about like the thing about perfection and kind of like how people view that, because it's just it's good to hear other people's viewpoints and kind of see what's important, or like kind of like why you put certain values on different items.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely down to come back and talk about perfection because I've lived much of my life as a perfectionist and let that hold me back from accomplishing so many be able to. So I'm definitely down for that. But yeah, like you said, we can end it where it is now. And yeah, thanks for having me on. And
You're welcome. And if I can get your just if you can send me a messenger your shirt size and your email, that way I can get in contact with you. I'm trying to get some t-shirts made, and hopefully I can get it done by the end of the year, and I'll send you that. So if I need like your shipping information or something, I'll do that. Otherwise, I'm trying to get this drop ship thing to work to where I can just have you go online, fill out the form, and then it'll just come to you per your information.
gotcha. All right, I'll send you that information.
Okay, appreciate it.
All right, peace
Well,
out.
you have a good night or good morning, I guess, since
Good
you're on the
morning.
night shift.
All
Rest up
right,
well. Appreciate you,
all right,
Gerald.
no problem, man. Bye.